Marcus Chun had interviewed over 300 candidates in his 12 years as CEO of Apex Innovations, but he'd never seen anyone walk into his corner office wearing mud-splattered jeans and carrying a sleeping child. The woman standing in his doorway had wild auburn hair escaping from a hasty ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, and a 4-year-old boy draped across her shoulder like a question mark. She looked at Marcus, then at the gleaming mahogany desk, then back at Marcus with an expression that could only be described as barely controlled panic. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I know I'm early. I can wait outside. There was an accident on the highway, and the daycare called, and my babysitter." She stopped, visibly collecting herself. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm here for the senior engineer position." Marcus glanced at his assistant's empty desk through the glass wall. Linda was at lunch. He checked his tablet. The 1:30 interview was indeed with an S. Mitchell, credentials impressive enough to make the short list of 5 from over 200 applicants. But the resume had said nothing about this. "Ms. Mitchell," he began, ready to suggest rescheduling. Professional boundaries existed for a reason. Then the child stirred, and Sarah's entire body, tense like a violin string about to snap. Marcus watched her hand move protectively to the boy's back, watched her jaw set with a kind of determination he'd only seen in soldiers and single parents. Often the same thing, he'd learned. "Please," she said quietly, "just give me 5 minutes. I can do this interview in 4 minutes." Something in her voice made him pause. Not desperation, exactly. More like defiance wrapped in exhaustion. The sound of someone who'd heard no so many times that one more wouldn't break her, but might finally make her give up. "Sit down," Marcus heard himself say. Sarah practically collapsed into the leather chair across from him, adjusting the boy carefully so his head rested against her chest. Up close, Marcus could see the coffee stain on her shirt, the broken zipper on her jacket held together with a safety pin. But he also saw her eyes, sharp, alert, cataloging every detail of the room with the kind of analytical precision his best engineers possessed. "So," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, "tell me about your approach to systems integration." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah Mitchell gave the most remarkable interview of Marcus's career. She spoke in low tones to avoid waking her son, but her answers were anything but soft. She dissected complex problems with elegant simplicity, proposed solutions that Marcus's own team had taken months to consider, and when he presented her with a deliberately unsolvable engineering paradox, she smiled, and explained 3 ways to reframe the problem until it wasn't paradoxical at all. "Where did you work before?" Marcus asked, though he knew her resume showed a 3-year gap. "Helix Dynamics," Sarah said, "senior systems architect. I designed their core infrastructure platform." She paused. "Then my husband died, and I had Noah, and Helix didn't exactly have a bring your grief to work policy. I did freelance consulting from home for a while, but..." She gestured to the sleeping child. "Clients want someone who answers calls at midnight. I needed to be someone who reads bedtime stories at 8. Marcus set down his pen. "You're overqualified for this position." Sarah's face went carefully blank. "I see. You should be interviewing for Chief Technology Officer, not Senior Engineer." "I applied for Senior Engineer because that's what was posted," Sarah said evenly. "And because CTO positions require 70-hour weeks and international travel, and I have a son who needs me home for dinner and tucked into bed. Not a nanny with my credit card and my apologies." "Fair enough." Marcus stood, walked to his window overlooking the city. 16 floors below. People who didn't have to choose between ambition and presence hurried to meetings, lunches, lives uncomplicated by the mathematics of childcare and career. "What if I told you I hired the wrong person for CTO 6 months ago?" Sarah said nothing. "Richard Paulson. Brilliant credentials, mediocre execution. He's costing us market share because he can't translate vision into infrastructure. My board want him gone, but I need a replacement who can clean up his mess and scale us for the next 5 years." Marcus turned back to Sarah. "I need someone who can solve impossible problems. With respect, Mr. Chun, you need someone who can work impossible hours. I can't be that person." "What if you didn't have to be?" Marcus returned to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a leather folder. Last year, we lost 3 exceptional engineers, 2 women, 1 man, because they couldn't maintain our culture of performative overwork while also being present for their families. It cost us millions in recruitment, training, and lost productivity. So I've been developing a proposal. He slid the folder across to Sarah. Restructured leadership. Results-focused rather than hours-focused. Full remote flexibility with quarterly in-person requirements. Childcare stipend. Because here's what I've learned. The engineers who can solve a systems crisis in 20 focused hours are worth more than the ones who take 80 hours because they're half asleep. Sarah opened the folder with her free hand, her eyes scanning the proposal. Marcus watched her expression shift from skepticism to surprise to something that looked dangerously like hope. This is, she said slowly, really progressive. Why haven't you implemented it? Because my board thinks I'm crazy. They want proof of concept. They want to see someone succeed in this model before they'll approve it company-wide. Marcus leaned forward. I want to offer you the CTO position under these terms. You'd be the pilot program. If you succeed, and I think you will, you transform not just this company, but the precedent for how tech leadership works. Sarah looked down at Noah, still sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. Her hand trembled slightly as she smoothed his hair. And if I fail? Then we both fail, Marcus said simply. But I've been watching you for the last 20 minutes. You're already doing the hardest job in the world. You think running my company will be harder than raising a child alone, while rebuilding your career from scratch? Yes, Sarah said. Actually, I do. Because if I mess up bedtime, Noah forgives me. If I mess up your infrastructure, shareholders don't. Marcus laughed, surprised. Fair point. But here's the thing. You walked into this office in crisis mode, with every reason fall apart, and instead you gave me the most cogent analysis of distributed systems architecture I've heard in 5 years. You did that while covered in mud, exhausted, and making sure your son felt safe enough to sleep. So yeah, I think you can handle shareholder meetings. Sarah closed the folder, closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. My son deserves to see his mother succeed, not just survive. He deserves to see that asking for what you need isn't weakness. So does my daughter, Marcus said quietly. She's 15. She asked me last week why I'm never home. I didn't have a good answer, except that's how it's always been done. He stood, extended his hand. Help me show her there's a better way. Sarah shifted Noah carefully and stood as well, taking Marcus's hand. Her grip was firm despite the tremor. When would I start? 2 weeks. That gives you time to transition Noah to the company's childcare facility. It's on the 3rd floor. You pass it on your way up. At her startled look, Marcus smiled. I built it 3 years ago after my assistant came to work crying because her backup childcare fell through. Turns out solving problems for people makes them better at solving problems for you. Why did you really give me this chance? Sarah asked suddenly. You could have rescheduled. Found someone less complicated. Marcus thought about his own mother, who'd raised him and his sister alone after his father left, working 3 jobs while getting her nursing degree at night. About the resume he'd almost thrown away because the employment gap seemed like a red flag. About all the talent the world dismissed because it came wrapped in the wrong package. Because complicated people solve complicated problems, he said. And because someone once gave my mother a chance when she showed up to an interview with 2 kids in tow and determination in her eyes. She told me that later when I complained about how hard business school was. She said, hard is not the same as impossible. Don't confuse the two. Sarah's smile transformed her tired face into something radiant. My son is going to grow up knowing that his mother was CTO, that she didn't have to choose between being his parent and being herself. And my daughter, Marcus said, is going to grow up in a world where that's normal. As Sarah left his office, Noah still sleeping on her shoulder and a future in her other hand, Marcus watched them go and thought about all the S. Mitchell still out there, brilliant and exhausted and fighting for recognition in a system designed to exclude them. He thought about boards of directors who'd never had to choose between career and a child, and what it meant to build something better than what you inherited. His phone buzzed. Linda, Back from lunch. Did the 1:30 interview go okay? Saw someone leaving with a child. Marcus typed back, I just hired our new CTO. And yes, she came with child. That's part why I hired her. 3 dots appeared as Linda typed, then disappeared. Then, about time someone shook things up around here. Marcus smiled, looking out at the city where impossible things became possible every day, one brave decision at a time. Somewhere down there, Sarah Mitchell was probably sitting in her car, crying or laughing or both, holding her sleeping son, and calling someone to share the news that today, finally, someone had looked at her whole complicated life and said yes. Tomorrow, they'd start building something new together. But tonight, she'd go home for dinner and bedtime stories. Proof that you could have both, if someone was willing to believe that both was possible. The revolution, Marcus thought, wouldn't be televised. It would be one working parent at a time. Show the world that excellence doesn't require sacrifice, just imagination, courage, and someone willing to see possibility where others saw problems. He turned back to his desk, opened his laptop, and began drafting the presentation for his board. They wouldn't like it, but they hadn't liked a lot of his ideas at first. Good thing he'd stopped asking for permission years ago. Outside his window, the city gleamed in the afternoon sun, full of people like Sarah, brilliant, resilient, waiting for the world to catch up to what they'd always known, that the future belonged to whoever was brave enough to rewrite the rules.